Hi, I'm Jeff Davis of the Friends of Sonoma County Wine Library with today's visual oral history. We're here at Rochioli Vineyards, and in a moment I'll talk with third generation family member and winemaker Tom Rochioli. But I'm going to start with Joe Rochioli Jr. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming out of retirement to talk with me.
Okay.
Now, I understand you are full of stories, so if
Well,
something comes up along the way you
They're
feel
not
like
all
sharing.
vineyard stories, but I got a lot of stories, yeah.
Well, anything that pertains to the Sonoma County wine industry,
Yeah.
feel free to share any stories
Well,
that come to mind.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we'll be asking you some questions.
Okay.
And your family's American legacy goes back to 1911, when your grandfather moved over from Italy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He had been here previously, I guess, but then came again with
Yeah,
his
he
new bride.
came earlier, and then he came to America, and he was a mason. He got a job in Fremont, California, and then he was in a movie, and then
He was an extra in a movie.
Actually, he was discriminated against because he was one of the few Italians down there, and he got in a big fist fight, and so he got mad and went back.
Wow.
Back to Italy. And then he remarried, and then
Came back over.
Then came back over.
From what I understand, they lived in a small village outside of Lucca, which is in Tuscany,
Yeah.
the Tuscany region.
Right.
So you can almost think that you have wine growing in your DNA.
Yeah. Well, where they came from was in the mountains, but not far from Lucca. There's that Chianti area where there's a lot of grapes. Not too many miles away.
What was your grandfather and his wife's name?
My grandfather's name was Michele Rochioli, and his first wife was Assunta Catalani, and the second wife was Menichina Viviani.
Wow. So they arrived in New York and they made their way out here
Yes.
again to California,
Right.
even though he was upset the first time he was here, but
Yeah.
he came back,
He came back to the Waller Ranch from where he was in Niles.
started working at the Wohler Ranch, which is just down the road.
Yeah, just down the road, yeah,
Yeah.
just about 4 miles.
I didn't realize it until I looked at some photos that is now the
The Rayford house was part of the old home that it was owned by the Peterson family, and it was leased by Mona and Billy Chisholm. And they had the whole ranch leased. It was a huge ranch, one of the biggest, I think, at least in this county, because it was
Wow.
1,100 acres of hops, 350 acres of vineyard, 100 acres of hay, 100 acres of apples, 80 full-time horses and mules,
Wow.
80 full-time men.
So all that land out there with all the
yeah.
vineyards now was
Yeah, it's from the Russian River to Marquest Creek, over the East Side Road, and back up to almost to where used to be a gravel plant there, Kaiser.
well, that remodeled Rayford Inn is beautiful.
Yeah,
So
it's all
it's whole
now. Yeah, now it's split up so many ways. I don't know who owns what
Right,
anymore.
right.
But the Rayford house is still. They fixed it up.
The
and
old Victorian home.
yeah, I remember I used to go in there, and then when the Chisholms they finally quit farming the hops and everything, went back to the Peterson family, and there was 2 boys that were in their early 20s or something. One was military; he lived in the bottom half, and Rayford, who was a real estate person, lived in the upper half. So they went back to the Petersons, and then they started splitting it up and selling it.
That was a little later, though.
Oh yeah.
From what I understand, though, your father was just a child, started working on the farm at like 10 years old.
Yeah, he was there. Well, he went up to Scotia and worked in a mill, and then he had a trap line for a while.
So a little bit later on, when he was older. Yeah.
But I know my dad went to Scotia when he was like 16. He tried to go to school, and they jumped him 4 grades and sent him home. He was 16. So
Wow.
anyway, then he came back, and after a few short years, they made him foreman. He was in his early 20s, I
Yeah,
think.
and that was in 1920, from what I understand.
20, yeah, early 20s.
Yeah. And 14 years later, his wife, Neoma, became a mother when she had you.
Well, actually, I had my sister first.
Oh, okay. So she was already a mother before that.
She was a mother. Yeah, my sister was born there in the ranch. My mother was born there in that ranch.
Wow. What a history, huh?
Yeah, so,
And what is it, like 3 miles down the road?
yeah, just 4 miles down the road, yeah.
And shortly after you were born, then your father moved up here
Yeah.
to what was called...
37, we moved up here. We didn't, he got a lease in 37. I guess it was a lease for 38. But my mother wanted to move in before Christmas. And the old house down there was a shambles. You know, so it was built in, I think, in the 1800s.
Right.
So we got it done.
So you moved up here.
Yeah, we were living in it before Christmas.
This property was called Fenton Acres at that
Yeah, it was
time.
called Fenton Acres.
So it was the same situation. He was working on the farm here at that time?
Yeah, actually he leased it. He leased this.
Okay.
That goes back now. Mrs. Fenton was a Walters. And Solomon Walters bought this ranch in 1880. Bought this piece and the hop kiln piece.
Right
all
next
one piece. 400, close to 400 acres. I have the deed in my safe. Written out in 1880.
Still protecting that, huh?
Yeah, I still have it. So then, over the years, the two of them, the brother and the sister, couldn't get along, so they split the ranch. So we got the girls' part here, and Landmark now has the boys' part.
The hop kiln.
And sold a
right
couple
over here.
times, the hop kiln.
And they were growing hops on this property
Yeah,
as well.
Solomon Walters, the old man that bought it in 1880, he did just about everything. In 1880, he built a barn across the road, built a big Victorian house right in front of the tasting room walkway.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, we have pictures of it. And then he built, he had a boy in 1880. That's one of the boys was born. So he did a lot. And he bought the ranch, built a barn, and built a house in 1 year, and
Wow.
had a baby.
That's and had a baby.
Yeah,
That's quite a lot of work.
it is. And
But
well,
when-
you know, I don't know if we want to go back to Solomon Walters, but he's the one that built hop kilns. He built them in 1905, and my uncle's uncle helped build them. So
And still standing,
still standing there.
looking good.
They just did a big, you know, the guy that owns it's very wealthy, so they,
Yeah, the Landmark Vineyards
yeah,
now
they
owns it.
just redid them all. They had to put
They're in the process of remodeling it, yeah.
restore them. That's the job.
Yeah.
I saw the bid on the first one was close to $1 million to restore the rock.
Old Walter's rolling over in his grave
Oh
knowing
my
that.
God, $1 million he could have bought all the west side.
Right. So when you moved here, there were prunes being grown, hops, as we mentioned. Also, they had a little bit of a vineyard here too?
Mostly hops and vineyard. Very few. There's 5 acres of prunes that we put in later in years.
Okay.
But there was mostly hops and vineyard when we first moved here. And we're still using horses. We had, you know, my sister and I were small. I don't know if there's a picture of us there, but we used to wait till about 5 o'clock when the guys would come home. We'd run down the field and get on the back of the horse to give us a ride home.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So
Save the steps.
we
So
were 4 or 5 years old.
now I understand some of the vineyards that were here on the property were French Colombard, some early Burgundy, and Valdegris.
Some of the first vineyards were Alicante Boucher, Grand Or, Malvasia, Sauvignon Vert, and then there was some Petit Syrah. Those were some of the first ones, and some Zinfandel on the other part.
Oh, okay. So did you guys then plant the French Colombard and?
We
Burgundy?
planted the French Column Bar in 1957.
Oh, okay, that came a little later on then.
Yeah, later on.
And eventually, though, your father ended up buying this property.
Yes, he bought it, and yeah, there was a
the
deal
mid-fifties?
made. Yeah.
Kept it as Fenton Acres, though.
It was
quite a
Fenton
while.
Acres until when Tom came along. We changed it. It was
Right.
Fenton Acres from 1926 till 1980, something.
But all the time you put in at Wohler Ranch and here finally paid off and
Yeah.
you own the property. Then in 1959, you and your father planted Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, we planted Sauvignon Blanc in 1959.
And at that time, it didn't really have the reputation and,
No.
and the admiration that it
Well,
does now.
there was no such thing as varietals in those days.
Right.
They were all standards. Nobody would plant them because everything was jug wines.
Just mixing, blending. And,
Yeah.
Mhm.
You go to, the grapes that we sold went to Gallo indirectly. You know, the Martini Prati, Sagacio, Volpiano, all these wineries, Windsor Co-op, they took in all these grapes, but they were all going to go to Gallo. And then they'd crush them and send the juice to Gallo.
Right, boy.
And we always, say this, but when it come time to pay, we had no idea what we were going to get. He wouldn't tell us.
For the Callo, he wouldn't tell you what he was going to pay you for the grapes.
In those days, it was legal.
Huh.
So we never had no clue what we were going to get till just before taxes, December, first part of December, he'd come out with a check for whatever he wanted to pay us, and that's what we got. $80, $75 a ton.
Now, was that Ernest? Was he the one that was handling
No,
the money?
Julia was handling it.
Julia. And Ernest was more the
Ernest
wine
was more of
production
the
winemaker.
production
And Julio was the money man.
Yeah, he was the wine man.
And they were
So, but then I joined we formed a growers association, and we got together and we fought this open price contract.
oh, good.
And we even had a Assemblyman sponsor a bill saying that it's against the law to sell something without a price.
Oh, great.
And we thought we had it made, and we went into Sacramento, and they said, "Oh my God, you mean to tell me you guys are selling grapes without a price?" And, "Oh yeah." Well, you know who the lobbyists were? Gallo, CBC, CPC, and some of these big companies.
They were keeping it
So
quiet.
we thought we had it made. So we thought we were going to get this bill passed.
Oh.
So we go into the conference room, we're looking around, there's about 5 guys left, and it died from a lack of a quorum.
Oh, geez.
So we went back to where we were, square
It
one.
continued on that way then. Huh? Wow.
Went all that way for nothing.
When did you finally get a
We
price?
finally, it was several years later but we started selling, I started growing some varietals, and some of the other guys that were on our committee started growing varietals, and we were getting separate contracts,
Right.
not selling to Gallo. By then, there was a few little wineries started up, Dry Creek, Windsor Vineyards. So we were able to sell some of the varietals, and of course Mondavi. So I sold some grapes to Mondavi in 1968.
A couple years after he.
Yeah,
He
just
started.
right after he opened.
Yeah. And was it 68 when you decided to plant Pinot Noir on this property?
Well, I decided long before that, but
When you finally got
my
around
dad
to it.
wouldn't let me do it.
Oh, he held you off a little while, huh?
Yeah, I wanted to plant Pinot Noir first thing, but the old timers like my uncles, they said, "Oh, don't plant that stuff, don't produce," and they were right, really, because we're going to get any more per ton.
Uh-huh. Well, it's a tough one to grow, isn't it? And
And
it's
it's tough,
thin-skinned,
it's
but if
a
you
lo-
do
I
it
tried to
properly,
produce I wanted a French clone. The university developed a clone that produced pretty good, called Gamay Beaujolais in those days, but I didn't want to plant that because I tasted some of the wines that looked like rosé. So I
Lighter
want
wine.
something like the Burgundy wines that were, I don't know. Mostly in those days, they had appellation control. They controlled the crops. The government didn't.
right?
And I think that's why they produce better wines.
Huh.
So that's what I was looking at. So, you know, I wanted to get a good French clone in here. And
Did you understand that you had the right terroir or the right soil for Pinot Noir?
well, yeah, I did. We did some. I worked with the University of California, and they put a weather station here.
Oh, on your property.
Yeah, on my property. And once a week, I had to go down and change the chart. It charted the temperatures for a week.
Uh-huh.
And so we did that for a couple of years, and we knew. Then they started talking about Region 1, Region 2, Region 3, Region 4.
So you started understanding that
Yeah.
certain parts of the vineyard were
Yeah.
different from others.
So we were low Region 1. So, and they said that Pinot Noir will ripen with the low Region 1.
It was warm enough that it would
Yeah.
ripen and cool enough at night to calm it down and then make some wonderful wine. But you waited because your father died in '66, was it? And
Yeah,
then
it
you
was-
planted it in '68. So
Yeah. Well, that's what happened. Yeah, that was. But my dad, I finally talked him into putting in some Sauvignon Blanc in '50. And I came home from the army. I brought him over to Davis,
uh-huh.
and they had 12 experimental rows there of Sauvignon Blanc, and they were just loaded. This was in June or something like that.
Still
He says, well, maybe we could put a block of that in. The 10-acre block down there.
uh-huh.
So
You liked the volume of it.
then
was
I
able to
came
produce.
back, you know, and then in September, I think it was, I went and budded them. I had to go back and cut the wood. When I went back, they were ripe, you know, they were ripe, but they hadn't picked them yet.
Huh?
So I started tasting different rows,
Uh-huh.
and I found one row that had like a little dried fig flavor, and I thought, oh, damn, I like that. I didn't know if that was good or bad. So I took all my budwood off of that one row.
Okay. Good thinking.
And I budded that block down there.
Wow, great.
Sauvignon Blanc.
Now, what were you blending that with back at that time when you started?
What was
Well,
it?
you weren't making wine yet, were you, at that
No.
point? But it was a little while later, not too much longer, in the '70s when you started
Yeah.
under the Fenton
Yeah.
Acres
Well,
label.
my dad was still alive, so we got that planted, and we had French cultivars planted down here, and they were paying their way. You know, they were helping us out. And we planted in between the grapes. We planted 12-foot rows, and then in between we planted beans.
Mm-hmm.
So it helped supplement our income a little bit.
Okay. So not just to supplement the soil with
Yeah.
nutrients, but you were using it as a crop too.
Yeah. No, that's another story. The beans.
The beans is another
Went from
story.
hops to beans to then.
Whatever you can do to make a buck back then.
Oh yeah, you had to.
Yeah.
It's not like it is today. I still had the Pinot Noir on my mind, and I wanted to plant it on the other side of that Sauvignon Blanc. And between my uncles and my dad says, no. Boy, it would have been beautiful, but my dad chose early Burgundy, and I haven't found that variety yet in the book. I
Early
don't know
Burgundy.
what it was, but it was full of leaf roll, the worst damn grapes I've ever seen in my life.
It wasn't Pinot Noir though.
No,
And it wasn't Gamay either.
No, it wasn't Gamay. It was like a Carignan or something like that, but it's full of leaf roll, and then ripened very good, then produced very good. And then '66, my dad died, and that same year, I had an old front-end loader tractor, and I made my own tooth to dig down and get the roots out, you know. It was raining like hell, and I was spinning and sliding all over the place, and you can't believe how hard I worked down there. But I dug every damn one of those vines out by the roots.
Regardless of the weather, you just wanted to get them out, didn't you?
Raining, slipping, stuck, mad.
That's a memory that's
a lot
stuck
of
with you,
cussing
hasn't it?
going on down there. But I got them all out in '66.
Wow, great.
Then I got the ground ready and everything. And the first Pinot Noir I planted was in '68.
Now, from what I understand, you're one of the first, if not the first, to plant Pinot Noir in Russian River
Yeah,
Valley.
Joe Swan had a little patch, and I don't know if anybody else. I guess Botchklupi had planted some. I budded them for them. So
Yeah, I understand you helped them
they
out.
say they planted in '65, but I don't know.
Yeah, there seems to be some
A little,
question
I
about
did,
who
I did the
did what
budding,
first.
I know.
So you were first because you planted theirs for them.
Yeah.
But you ended up pulling out the Cabernet Sauvignon in the early 70s. It
Well,
just
that
didn't
stayed
really.
on for a while. We had 4 acres here, and it stayed on till what year did we pull that out, Tom? 1988, 89, somewhere in there. Last in the Olmos Vineyard.
You just
So
never
we
really.
called it the Olmos Vineyard.
The Almost Vineyard.
Yeah. It was a Cabernet, but this isn't Cabernet country.
No.
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 So one year I picked them in middle of November. The leaves are all start falling off, and the grapes are all shriveled up, and I still only got 23 sugar.
Just
You know,
didn't ripen up.
Just don't ripen.
Yeah.
They're for hot areas.
Well, if you can grow Pinot Noir well here, then
Oh,
it
yeah.
just indicates that Cabernet Sauvignon is not.
So then Davis Bynum came along in 1973. Well, no, actually, I think maybe it was 73, 72.
Yeah, early.
Anyway, in 73, he made a hell of a Pinot Noir off of those grapes that I had down there. And what was I going to say? But anyways, he, I think, got an award for one of the outstanding Pinot Noirs in the state. I think he won maybe the state. I don't know if he did.
No, if I'm not mistaken, was Davis Bynum just
Yeah.
down around the corner where St.
Yeah.
George Winery is now?
well,
or Thomas
yeah.
George Winery is now?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Everyone
but
just-
anyway, then I got few more dollars. So then we started getting a little bit, getting open price contracts. We were getting contracts with wineries, and then we tried to get Market News Service, which is a newsletter that comes out once a week and tells all the pricing of all the different things, of grapes and everything. They wouldn't print North Coast.
They wouldn't?
No.
Oh. Was
We
that Gallo
fought with
again
them.
getting
We
in the
fought
way?
with one guy clear out of the room. He said, we don't mean anything up here,
Wow.
So finally we got them to print some of the little contracts. I had contracts, Charlie Barra had contracts, Gene Frediani had contracts. All these guys that were on this board had some contracts, so we wanted them to print them.
Yeah.
Some of them were pretty good sized contracts. I had a pretty good sized contract with Corbel.
Did you? With the Pinot?
No, actually it was
was that-
Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, really?
I couldn't give it away, so from one year, Corbel bought it.
Oh, great.
I think it was 65.
Earlier on, yeah.
No, wait a minute. 65? Yeah. 68, I sold to Mondavi a little bit, but I couldn't haul it fast enough. And
Yeah,
then-
it's quite a distance from here to Napa.
And he just opened a winery and didn't have the facilities to dump my I had a big gondola, And you have to put stands under it, and then you lift one in and tip it over. Mostly they had all trailers over there, so they just
Right.
picked them up and dumped them. But anyway,
It's amazing that that Sauvignon Blanc that you planted is still producing today.
still producing.
Can you believe that when you look over that vineyard
No.
and think that you planted that so long ago?
Yeah, that's it's hard to believe, but it's we babied it along. We put on a GD system, GDC,
What's that?
cross arms, and now we're training it. We have some Italians that came over and are training it a certain way. So it's still growing. We're still getting about. Last year we got close to 30 tons, 3 tons to the acre.
Yeah, you don't hear the term old vine Sauvignon Blanc too often.
No, not too often.
Yeah, you hear it with
Mostly Zinfandel.
Zinfandel, sometimes Cabernet, but
Cabernet, yeah.
not with Sauvignon Blanc. And your Chardonnay, when did you plant the Chardonnay? Do you remember?
I started, I think, in '74.
And that's doing well.
I started up on the hill there. Then
So-
I planted alum, another one down here. So,
And you've basically spent your whole life on this property, haven't you?
oh yes, I have. I've been here all my life.
Yeah, they moved up here right after you were born.
Except for 2 years.
Wow. Are you amazed at how things have changed up here?
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm sure the traffic is quite a bit more than it ever was before.
Traffic and, you know, just the whole, you know, the environment's changed. Used to be a bunch of old hop farmers here, and by 6 o'clock everybody be in bed or eating or something. And
Right.
I was playing football in high school, and I never had a car my freshman year, so I had to hitchhike home after practice. And hell, you can stick your thumb out all you wanted because nothing ever
Nothing was
came
going
by.
by.
Once in a while, the old the telephone man. We had a guy that had the old style phones,
Uh-huh.
and the telephone guy'd come by. Had an old Model 8 truck. He lived right up here,
Wow.
and so he knew me. You know, his wife was the operator. She was the operator for the area.
That's great.
So I'd say, oh, please, please.
How could
It
he
was
not?
getting dark, you know, and I thought, oh, God damn it, he was going right by me.
Oh,
He did that twice.
passed you twice?
Third time up here by Madrona Manor, he had some ladders sticking out and some stuff, and I said, okay, here we go. So I ran like hell and jumped on the back of that damn truck, and I jumped off. It almost killed me up here when he drove in his driveway. I don't think he ever knew I did it.
Didn't know you were back there.
No, but I got a free ride home.
You
that
went
night.
around the corner and you just
Yeah,
jumped off.
that's almost 5 miles.
So you were going to high school in Healdsburg.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good
Playing football.
walk from Healdsburg to here.
It is. It's 6 miles, actually.
Yeah. And back then, yeah, like you say, there was
Oh,
not much between here and there.
You never saw a car.
There weren't 24 wineries between here and
No,
there.
there was nothing.
that time.
A bunch of old hop growers went to bed early.
Well, it's kind of nice that the hop kiln facility is next door still. It's still
yeah,
standing.
That makes me feel good.
Yeah.
I did a lot of
You've-
work in there.
You've seen
a
that
lot
your
of
whole
sweat.
life too.
I worked hard on them hop kilns when I was young.
Do you know where the hops were going at that time?
No, we didn't know. They went to brokers. My dad contracted with brokers who, in turn, sold to breweries.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So, you know, there was a middleman.
Yeah. It's about time we should start growing some more hops around here because
Wow.
all these craft breweries that are popping up, they're going through the hops like crazy.
We used to raise, I don't know how many bales, but, you know, all this whole flat and the landmark property over there, there's about 80 acres probably, you know. I used to get maybe 8 bales to the acre,
Yeah.
8, 10.
And were you using the long strings to grow them at that time?
Oh yeah, yeah. They're all 18 foot high.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old style.
It's quite a crop, isn't it?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
One year we worked both day and night. During the day we had hand pickers. During the night we had a machine down here that harvested, and we had to do both. We'd take a shower in between breaks.
Wow.
Something break down. We'd sleep in between breaks.
You worked hard back then, didn't you?
Oh, worked hard.
You started young, and your son started
Yeah.
pretty young too, out in the
Yeah.
from what I understand.
Yeah, I had him working in the prunes, and he didn't like that too much.
Well, I think it might be time to bring Tom in and talk
Okay,
with him
yeah.
about his part of the legacy here at Rochioli Vineyards. And through the magic of video, now we have Tom Rochioli sitting here, the third generation family member, who was at least with the winery anyway, and the wine growing. And your dad was talking about some of the people he was selling grapes to, and one of your bigger clients was William Selliam in the early days, and that was in the early 80s.
Absolutely. William and Selliam used our West Block from the beginning, maybe the late 70s, early 80s, but in 1985, they won this huge award in the California State Fair, and that had Rochioli pasted right on the front. Basically, that launched, I believe, launched Rochioli not necessarily our brand, but the name Rochioli, because right now, currently, I mean, we're on quite a few labels, and the vineyards are performing very well.
Was that your idea to have the vineyard designated, or did they
No,
offer that?
that's before me. I came in the early 80s, but of course I was 24 years old, so I started the brand Rochioli, but it was basically looking at how we can make fine wines from this property, because guys were doing it. I mean, this wasn't unique. It wasn't just my vision. I mean, I realized that, boy, we could take this and go with it. And so, of course, you had William and Sonny, you had Davis Bynum in those days, doing very well.
It's so often you hear that story of the wine growers who see people making some big money off their grapes, and they're like, wait a minute, we should start our own brand.
Well, I left and worked. I graduated from college in finance, and I worked for Bank of America for a very short time. And I was working with some wineries, and the light bulb went off. I said, hey, we should be doing this. And I hated banking. I hated the tie. I wore shorts daily.
You were a vineyard guy.
I was. Well, that's all I did. I grew up in the field, and I had to pick prunes. I mean, you heard that already. But and I've done nothing else but that until I got out of college and worked in banking. So.
Now, did you leave with the intention of coming back, or were you thinking about maybe I'll go off and do something else and just change your mind?
Probably had set my sights on banking, but there's some realities to this. When you're a kid, and I was smart enough to get recruited. I've got the bank going, and I'm thinking, oh, this is great. But I really did not like it.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you that I realized my roots are in agriculture and farming. I'm a country boy. And my first assignment was downtown San Francisco in commercial banking. And
Which sounds exciting to a lot of people.
I think that would be huge. It was huge. In those days, they were telling me, this is the greatest thing for you. I resigned. Well, I had this in mind at that point, though. So.
Yeah, sometimes it's just deep within you, and you just can't get it out of your system.
It's real. But you know where your heart is. So.
And like you said, though, you got this idea, so you had finance in mind.
Oh yeah, well, thank God I got a finance degree, because it's very helpful in this business.
Right.
So because a lot of wineries come into this because there is a lot of money involved, but there's a huge amount of capital involved to get started. So our angle was that we had the property, and so that's a huge start, and a successful property as far as wine quality.
Now, I saw when you had the idea of making your own brand and making your own wine, there was some discussion with your father. So was he holding back a little bit on that?
You heard the story about how his father wouldn't let him. There was some resistance, but he was actually very good about it. I changed the name to Rochioli.
But you did have the Fenton Acres initially, right?
I was selling that product. That was a deal he had going with other partners, and he brought me into that partnership, removed those partners, but I recreated the business into Rochioli, and just for the reason we said before, Rochioli is who we are.
Well, and your name was established with William Saliam.
It was starting, and I said we need to be Rochioli. Fenton Acres is a huge historical thing for our family, but I guess I was one of those guys that was okay with change.
So in 1987, you released your first Pinot Noir, which was an 85 vintage, and
that's the first one made here. Yeah.
You had an incredible accolade out of that.
Out of nowhere. I mean, it's funny, and I'll disclose the beginning, but when you're first starting in the wine business, you get people that are not very welcoming as far as the retailers and the restaurants. I don't want this. And it's hard. I was young and getting my nose punched every time I went out. And I'll tell you, when the Wine Spectator gave us the Pinot Noir of the year, whatever it was on the front cover. All of a sudden, these guys liked me.
Oh, and I was like, yeah, I wonder how that happened.
I said, well, you didn't like me last month when I showed you the wine, but now you do. So
now you glanced over that. Let me say, Wine Spectator chose them as the #1 Pinot Noir, was that of the year? So that's an amazing accomplishment.
That was a launching pad for sure.
And you'd think, though, the restaurateurs would have known that you had done well, because your father mentioned you'd won some awards with your grapes.
We've won. We actually were winning with Sauvignon Blanc. That vineyard's a superstar, and so it's just Sauvignon Blanc, but it doesn't have the panache as Pinot Noir, but it was a star. So. Yeah, listen, right after that, everything started to go really well. In the early 90s, I actually changed and I created you want me?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So you and Teresa took a trip to Burgundy, and that's where you got some greater inspiration.
You know, the same thing. It hit me like a lightning bolt. I said, wow, there's all these vineyards in separate barrels. I tasted the differences. I had some knowledge of Burgundy, some interest in Burgundy, but when you go to Romanée-Conti, I mean, you've gone to the Holy Grail, and I just said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And we've had so many locations on this property and numerous soil types, and so I started playing that angle. I mean, it's taken years to develop some of the single vineyard sites that I actually bottle right now, but that's what we do. That's what I do. Now we do a wine for a blend of the property, but it's a blend of the single vineyard, so it's none of the stuff is, just regular. I hate that word.
Well, were they accommodating in Burgundy?
Absolutely.
As a winemaker
Absolutely.
from America?
Absolutely. And then we went back again 2 years ago, and I saw the guy that gave us the tour. It was the cellar master, Monsieur Noblet, and he looked at me, and I looked at him. He's across the cellar, and he came over. He didn't speak any English, right? And we've both changed a lot, let's just say, from 1990 to 2016.
You've gotten taller, right?
I got a lot taller, yeah. Broader shouldered, too. Anyway, we shook hands. He didn't have any hair. It was funny. It was great, and he remembered, and we tasted some of these just wicked wines, like 1945 La Tâche and 64 Le Montrachet, and he looks around and he goes, shh, because I guess he wasn't supposed to do it, but anyway, we had a ball.
Did you take him some of yours?
Absolutely, I did, yeah. They knew of Rochioli, they still know of Rochioli, so I don't think we're going to sell a lot of wine in France, but at least they recognize that this vineyard is one to pay attention to.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, nice getting that international.
Oh yeah, well that's a huge pat on the back for me.
Definitely.
Somebody likes me.
And what a great experience too. Yeah. You have a little bit of Syrah on your property here too. What are you doing with that?
Very little. We make 4 to 5 barrels a year. It's sold strictly here at the tasting room. Actually, it's to our members, but it was one of those things. We had a little Cabernet up on the hot side of a hill behind Sweetwater Springs Road, and it's a beautiful site, but it might be a little touch hot for Pinot, so we tried 4 rows of Syrah up there, and there's a little tiny patch in front of the barn. The one up by on the hill up there is fantastic. That's a serious deal. And I have an interest in Rhone. Am I going to start planting other Rhone varieties? No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
We're Pinot Noir here.
Wow, but I love a good Grenache.
Oh God, yes. So do I.
And Grenache goes
I got to
well.
focus though. I got to stay focused.
That's what it is. Yeah. And you're making sparkling wine now, though.
That's a Blanc de Noir, so the thread is Pinot Noir, but yeah. I do make the base. I send it off to have it disgorged and all that stuff. So it's a nice one though.
When did you add that to your portfolio?
11 was the first one, and then we do it every other year. So we skipped the 3. That was 14, 16. We're actually on the 14 vintage right now, and then 16 actually want to meet next in February and decide to bottle that. So and it's just a fun wine. It's not actively for sale, but
it's become quite popular.
Oh yeah,
these
and it's
days.
handy. I mean, first I like to drink it, but secondly, visitors, tours, parties, events. So you have a warm up.
It's always nice to show up at a party with
That's
with
right.
your own sparkling wine.
Yep, you might get in.
We're in December of 2018, and right now you're allocation list only, right? You don't have a wine club. Or do you call it?
I started this thing back, God, in the early '90s, just direct to consumer, and such limited amount of wine that I would allocate it. So we have lists that have tiers. If you've been with us forever, you're a 1. You get everything. You don't have to take it. If you order from us at all, you're never going to lose your position. But if you drop us, so we drop you.
Yeah.
So
right.
and we give you a couple of years to.
You've been doing that since the 90s. Huh?
Oh yeah.
Wow,
Along with the single vineyard program, I started the first single vineyard wine was '92. So I don't know if I came up with the idea, but I know that one of the first guys to pursue it.
Right. Well, wine clubs had only been around for a few years by then anyway. I think mid '80s is when
That's
Chateau
possible, yeah.
Chandon started it in Napa.
See, I didn't ever consider it a club. It was like customers would come, they'd join the list, we'd send them a release, those days was mail, you know, nice letter. I wrote the letters. And they'd send back their order form, and we'd pack the orders and ship them off. And yeah, it just morphed into life. It's all high tech now, but.
Right. So is that it for now? And any new plans? You're not going to plant any Grenache? You're going to keep just a little bit of Syrah?
No, I think the most exciting things that we're doing right now is preserving those old clones that my dad and even the Sauvignon Blanc where my dad and my grandfather were involved with. I've isolated the clones. I've selected, reselected. We have clean wood. So all our replanting now is true to the Rochioli clones. That's the biggest thing. Of course, we're replanting all the time and upgrading the roots and making sure everything's, we're going forward, doing the best we can. You know,
Right.
There's a lot of areas in the vineyards that have various diseases, or our biggest impact here is Pierce's disease. And so
Right.
there's been a lot of work on that to just to keep up with it to start with, because the plants die so quickly. And then, you know, we're figuring ways how to resist it. It's hard. It's a tough one.
It's never ending.
No, that's farming.
Your daughter Rachel works here now. Do you have any other children?
I do. I have a son, Ryan, who right now is making beer, as a matter of fact. And his idea is that he graduated from Davis, and he has a certificate in wine, but both children had to work 2 years away from here before I'd bring them in. And he decided to do at least 1 year away in beer. He's already done one at another winery, but and we still have some hops growing wild here.
Oh, yeah?
So you know, he
gonna
likes
ask
making
about
his own beer, and he starts thinking, well, I'm going to come back and make wine, but maybe I'll make a beer in the spring when there's nothing going on, you know, and have his own little.
Yeah, you're
I
kinda-
guess beer is cool right now. I'm not a huge beer
Oh.
drinker, but
Definitely.
yeah, it's in.
And you see people moving back and forth between those two
Oh
industries.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So no, he's a good kid. He'll be in soon.
Great. So the legacy will continue.
We're hoping the 4th generation will take it to the 5th.
Nice.
That's what the hope is for me. We won't be here, but
Well, you'll be here, well, based on your father, you're going to be around for
for
quite
a little while anyway. Okay.
Well, you must be quite proud of the legacy you have left here in Sonoma County.
It's very proud. Don't take anything for granted. I had a huge opportunity when I was young, and you know, it just turned into something really great. So yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff Davis for the Friends at the Sonoma County Wine Library. Thanks for watching this visual oral history at Rochioli Vineyards.